who do we think is going to be the starting 11 for Clemson football? Um, Something that I feel like a lot of people have already speculated on. A lot of things we've already talked about. We already kind of know a lot of them. Everything goes as planned. We already kind of know most of the starters, I feel like.
Right.
But there are some replacement players going on and some question marks in certain positions. And so I wanted to run through them real quick with you, starting with the offense.
All right. Well, where you want to go position by position? You want me to give my full 11, then you give your full 11.
We'll go position by position.
Position by position. Okay. Well, let's start with quarterback. I mean, that's kind of the general out there. I mean, do we really even need to say this? Of course, Trevor Lawrence is going to be your starting quarterback for the 2020 season. Obviously, it'll be a cool backup, kind of fight with DJ Uiagalelei and Tyson Pumachan back there, and see what they can do. And you'll hear a lot about them in the spring. They'll kind of be the hot names in the spring to watch out for. But as far as starting number one, obviously that's going to be Lawrence.
Yeah, and I wouldn't sleep on Tyson. I mean, he's somebody who came here from Connecticut, and I
Mhm.
believe when we saw him in spring last year, he had an arm on him. I think
Yeah.
he's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be able to challenge Trevor Lawrence. Now, do I think he's going to be able to step up and take over that position? It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I know how Dabo Swinney kind of does things, and we know over the past couple of years it's very hard to unseat the incumbent national championship winning quarterback in Trevor Lawrence and a guy who's always in the Heisman Trophy conversation. So it's kind of difficult to do that. But what I will say is that I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be in the starting position for sure. Tyson likely will be the backup, and then DJ will come in and as he is right now, learning the playbook and kind of going forward. Who knows? DJ might could go even further than that, but we'll see. Next up is running back position.
Mhm.
I don't think this one's kind of a shocker to anyone. Travis Etienne returns for his senior year,
Mhm.
and by all accounts, we believe that he's going to be the starter in that position.
Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt about that. He's going to be the starter there. I think they're going to rely on him probably a little more heavy than they did this past year. I know a lot of people, wanted to fuss about not using Travis Etienne enough, myself included, and I think he'll definitely be more of a Heisman contender this year than he was last year. So I think you might actually get your wish this time, Morgan. This time, next year, I think we're going to be talking about not this time next year, but when it comes time next year, I think we're going to be talking about Travis Etienne as a possible Heisman candidate.
Okay, so now you kind of pulled that one on me a little bit. I was not expecting you to say anything about Travis Etienne being a Heisman candidate. Now, we got into this hype last year about a
We did.
Heisman candidate. We talked about Trevor Lawrence and all the things that he could do. We talked about Travis Etienne and all the things that he could do. And it ended up the first game of the season, Travis came out hot, I believe, over 200 yards rushing against
Hmm.
Georgia Tech, and then kind of fell off.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence also had some accuracy issues and kind of fell off. Dabo Swinney's play style, not really the best for winning a stat game.
Yep. Very true.
So, but you're saying that there's still a chance.
Yeah, I think there's still a chance. Like I said, I think they're going to rely on him a little bit more than they have in the past. And I think the fact that they've now learned how to use him out of the backfield, we saw some big time plays made in the playoffs, from that standpoint. So I think he's going to get more touches, a lot more big play yards. When you get him in the open field, it's dangerous, as we all know. So I think it's going to be a fun thing to watch going forward.
And what you got for like wide receivers? I know there's a couple of them out there. I think there's a few that I believe are going to continue to be starters from last year.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually did. I will go ahead and give you all three wide receivers. I have Ross, of course, as a starter, kind of taking over, for T. Higgins, kind of being that guy, kind of being the alpha dog receiver that we need. I think he's going to be ready to step in that role, even though people were a little bit disappointed in what they saw from him this year. A lot of that due to just T. Higgins' brilliance on the field. I think Ross is going to be ready to step into that role and possibly leave after his junior year for the NFL. In the slot wide receiver position, I have Amari Rogers. I think we all know he's kind of the guy there. Coming back from the injury he sustained, he'll be kind of full go, ready to rock and roll. Hopefully, going into this season. It's the third one where there's the debate. The third wide receiver position is kind of where there's some debate. A lot. I mean, I think the two you're really looking at there is Lads and Ngata. And I went kind of back and forth with this for a while. I like Ladson in his top end speed, and he made some plays as well. But I went with Ngata. I think his hands are fantastic. He's a big physical receiver. Um, and he made some great catches. I thought some difficult catches over the middle, which is something this team has lacked for sure. So I kind of gave him the edge there, but I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but Ross, Rogers, and Gata, I think, are the ones that most people are feeling like going into camp and coming out of camp. Those will be the top three wide receivers. Now, joining them is Ladson for sure, but then you're going to have E.J. Williams kind of trying to fight as well, and Ajoa. I think Ajoa is still got some development there, but has some really good raw talent and really good, just height and weight. So he's kind of a good presence there. But as far as ball skills and talent, he will need to be, kind of improve in that area. But another receiving person or receiving position, at least this year, I believe, is going to be more involved in the offense is going to be Braden Galloway for tight end position. That's who I put in there. Actually, I kind of put in him / Davis because I think both of them are going to compete, and I think they both have talent and can see equal amount of time.
I'll tell you this. I actually think Galloway is going to get the lion's share of the time here. I mean, people were super excited about when he came in in the playoffs, and he sure enough provided that dynamic that everybody's been waiting on. He kind of was the pass threat that everybody wanted to see. He's bulked up enough, so he's big enough to make some of those blocks. Davis Allen also did a good job learning the system and trying to get in there and get playing time as, Galloway was serving his suspension. But I really think Galloway is going to be that guy in that next big-time tight end for Clemson. So I have Galloway as a starter here.
I like that. And as for offensive line, there are 5 starters on the offensive line. We kind of talked about this a couple of shows ago. You've got Jackson Carman, someone on the left tackle that's not going to be a surprise that he's going to be starting in that position. And then what do you have after that?
Well, you're 100% right about that. Carmen's going to be your guy at left tackle. At left guard, I have Matt Bockhorst. Center, I have Cade Stewart. Right guard, Will Putnam. And right tackle, Jordan McFadden. I think Cade Stewart is kind of going to be the one that's up in the air. He's obviously a veteran, but he lacks, some immeasurables. He's had some snap issues as well. So it's certainly not, infeasible that somebody like Hunter Rayburn could come in there and kind of challenge for that position, or maybe somebody we haven't really heard much about yet, possibly one of the freshmen. I have my doubts there, but it's just kind of one of those you kind of want to keep an eye on. But the coaching staff has proved that they like to go with names they trust, and I think Cade Stewart is someone they trust.
Yeah, definitely Cade Stewart is a person that I think is trustworthy for the center position. Bockhorst, left guard, I have him down. I've got Will Putnam at the right guard. I kind of was shaky on this one because I also said that Paul Chio is going to, or Cho, is that right? Or is it Tio? Tio. Paul Tio is going to kind of fight there. I think he's got the height and weight as well to kind of start immediately, and then Jordan McFadden on the right tackle position. So kind of round out the offense there. I mean, for me, when people talk about the offense and what weaknesses you see, really, if you want to say weakness, if anything, or the least experienced position, would really be the right guard. You can't really say the whole offensive line. If you say the whole offensive line is their weak spot, you're not really paying attention to the snaps that these guys got last year, and you're also not paying attention to the amount of experience that they have at those positions. Cade Stewart's a fifth-year senior. Matt Bockhorst has over 300-something snaps last year. Mm-hmm. Carman's obviously got a ton of snaps. McFadden had a ton of snaps last year, and Putnam served with a ton of snaps as well. So I think it won't be a weakness, but if the least experienced has got to be Putnam.
Yeah, I would say that's 100% accurate. Now, it's not the frontline starters that I think most people are worried about. It's the depth. The center position, there are some concerns there, as I mentioned before, but I think it's really the depth issue. I think you're going to be relying on a lot of freshmen and possibly a couple, maybe 2, if not 3 true freshmen to get in there. And then you're hoping Vincent comes back from injury. There's just a lot to be said there for the depth of offensive line position all the way across the board, really.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go into defense real quick, and starting with the defensive line and the defensive ends. Mm-hmm. I actually originally felt like that the freshmen were going to show out in spring practice, and I still believe that. I'm putting Miles Murphy as a starter coming out of spring practice along with XT/Justin Foster. I'm not really decided on who's going to end up being that. I think, if anything, maybe XT gets pushed back because of his really, he seemed kind of limited as far as the types of moves that he could do in the 3-4 or the 3-3-5.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because of how he played and because of that type of scheme. He might be completely different in a 4-3.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I expect him to be there. If that's not the case, then I might see. I wouldn't be surprised to see Foster on that side, and maybe Miles Murphy on the other side.
Yeah, I actually have Thomas and Foster as my two starters. Think Justin Foster was a pretty solid guy last year, and like you said, I think the 3-3-5 really hurt Xavier Thomas. I think he was just he was double teamed too many times, and he's a smaller defensive end. He relies on that speed rush to get around that tackle, and when he's swallowed up by two guys, there's not a lot he can do. Now, that's not to say he doesn't have a lot to improve on. He does. He did not have the season last year everybody thought he could, and it wasn't just scheme. That caused that. Maybe it was, work ethic or, not getting his head in the game, whatever that was. And I think that was his wake up call. I think last year was his wake up call. He kind of got put on the bench at times and he was in the coach's doghouse a little bit. I think he understands the talent he has and the opportunity he has in front of him. And I think this year he gets it done. And I think just simply to send a message to a 5-star like Miles Murphy is, hey, you got to pay your dues. I don't think he's gonna label Murphy the guy coming out of the spring. Now, if Murphy proves himself maybe in the fall, I think he has a shot to get there before the season gets here. But I'm going to say Thomas and Foster are my guys going in.
Well, you already knew I was leaning hard on those freshmen. I really expect them to do really well, and I didn't. It's no surprise that you went for more of the veteran guys. I think that's kind of how the fan base is really right now. On the other hand, defensive or interior defensive linemen, I've got Capehart and Bresee. Really, I think that. I know you're going to say, well, what about Tyler Davis? To me, DeMonte Capehart is a guy who can come in and beat out Tyler Davis. I think he's bigger, he's taller, and he's got the same kind of skill. When I look at Capehart and I look at Davis, they look like the same guy, except Davis is 6'1". And I believe Capehart has about 4 or 5 inches on him. And so I think that eventually Capehart's gonna kind of fight for more playing time. Now, will he really become a starter that quickly? Maybe it's just my wishful thinking for these freshmen and my excitement behind it. But I think most people feel like Bresee is going to definitely be there. So if Bresee's there, then Pickney or Davis has got to get out of there or move to a second line. And so Bresee and Capehart are my two.
Well, I got to tell you, you are really bullish on these freshmen, and I think I've been as bullish as anybody, especially when it comes to Bresee. I've told you 100 times I think he is going to be one of the best defensive players and probably the best defensive player ever to come through Clemson. But what we're talking about here is how are they going to exit the spring? And I think that's kind of where I'm drawing the line of your optimism and my realism. Okay, because what I have coming out of the spring at least is I have Davis and Pinkney as your starters. I went back and forth between Pinkney and Williams. I think Davis you have to have in there as a starter coming out of spring ball. I mean, he just played so well. Obviously, he has the whole year under his belt as well. That's a big plus going for him. But I think I actually think Williams has a higher upside than Pinkney. He's yet to show that consistently, but he did play well near the end of the year. I'm going to give the edge to Pinkney since he kind of came back, and a lot of people thought he might, kind of exit and just kind of walk off into the sunset after this year. He comes back. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he's gonna have the job coming out of spring. Now, like we mentioned before, I still think there's a very strong chance that Bresee is that guy maybe going into the season. But I'm going to give Capehart a little more time to develop, even though he does have the size. And this is not a knock on Capehart at all. I think he's going to be a completely dominant defensive tackle for us in the future. But right now, I'm going with the veterans, Davis and Pinkney.
Yeah, I knew it would be controversial, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to be the Stephen A. Smith of the show, kind of throw a wrench into everything. But no, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I don't necessarily disagree in the sense that it would be the easy way out to pick the incumbent guys, the guys that have been there, the guys that are the veterans. Those guys more than likely will be the starters out of spring. Will probably take a little bit longer, maybe into those fall two-a-days, to be able to actually get beat out. It'll probably take them a little bit longer than just a couple of weeks of practice, I would assume. Yep. So we will see. But going into linebacker position, and got some people in chat saying they're not so worried about the defense as much as on the offense and the wide receivers. Going back to the wide receivers real quick before we continue to linebackers, we're really on this kind of run through. We're talking about the first line guys, but wide receivers after that, I mean, you're looking at mostly freshmen other than, I believe, Cornell Powell.
Yeah, there's a lot of freshmen out there at wide receiver. I'm not as worried about the wide receiver position as everybody else is. I get the concern, especially the fact that Ross, kind of had a less than stellar season this past year. He still showed flashes of why he's going to be or could be a dominant guy. And I think people are going to think back, as the season draws near and near, what he did to Alabama a couple years ago in the championship game. And they're going to remember that he's got a lot of talent as well. I think he's ready to show it this year and what people are going to call his track year. And Amari Rogers as well. He's the same way. He's been a great slot guy for us, and I think he's going to continue to do so with a full season, of recovery and coming off his injury. I think he's going to be full go for the first time in a while, and that's going to really help him out. It's really that last receiver position, and who's going to get it? Is it going to be Ladson? Is it going to be Ngata? Is it going to be somebody that you don't even know? Is it going to be EJ Williams, like you mentioned? I'm confident, like I said, from some of the catches that I saw and got to make last year, that he can make some of these plays. I'm confident in Ladson as well, that they can do it, making a big jump from their freshman to sophomore years. So I'm just not as worried about it as everybody else.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, especially now that the Tigers have a tight end that's a threat,
Right.
and you're only going to really need three guys out there at one time at most, because if you go five wide, think about it. You're going to have Galloway and you're going to have Travis Etienne. You're not going to necessarily have four wide receivers out there. If you do, Ladson and Powell, EJ Williams. So you really do have depth now. Now you're kind of losing it in the sense that you had 10 and now they only have 8 scholarship guys right now. So there is a loss there.
Right.
They lost 4 guys and they only brought in 2. So there is that for sure. But back to linebacker, this is one that's going to look different this year, I believe. The linebacker position, Chad Smith's gone. And then Isaiah Simmons is a guy that is going to the NFL. We talked about that earlier. So James Skalski, really only guy left in the middle that was a starter from last year. So who's going to take those guys' place?
Yeah, Skalski's kind of the only known for sure. I would argue that Balin Spector is going to be a known as well at the will position. I would imagine. He's got a lot of talent. I really liked what I saw from him when he came in the games. And they'll have some other options there as well to kind of play with. You throw Venables in there a little bit. I think your guy at Sam starting out at least is Mike Jones. I think he's going to kind of be your guy there. A lot of people want to talk about Jalen Phillips kind of getting his shot there. But I think Mike Jones is your guy starting out. I like the athleticism from this guy. He's kind of I think he's more in the Dorian O'Daniel mold than Isaiah Simmons to me. But hey, we all like Dorian O'Daniel and thought there was never going to be another player like him. And then comes Isaiah Simmons. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But I think there's definitely some talent and athleticism at the linebacker position this time.
Yeah. And my first thought is Jones, Skalski, and Spector.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get Venables out there more too. Maybe Venables, this is kind of a sit on the second line right now until he gets his starting position after Skalski's gone. Maybe Venables is going to be in that middle linebacker spot. But I'm thinking, and I think you know where I'm going with this, but I'm thinking that you might see a Swint or a Simpson out there. One of those freshmen.
Yeah.
Young guys. I'm thinking, not in the middle linebacker position by any means.
Right.
But weak side linebacker?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on now. Give me some of that freshman blood in there. I wouldn't mind seeing Trenton Simpson run around wild on some offenses on the field. So give me some of my new guys. Give me Simpson, give me Swint, and we'll see. Give me Sergio Allen. We'll see what they can do, see how they can fit in as well. So I got to go with the new guys too. But as far as the secondary goes, you got DK. This is kind of scary when I wrote this down. Returning player, DK.
Right.
Okay, that's a little scary, Al. Only returning secondary player in the secondary, De'Arion Kendrick.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a big deal. But it's not as big a deal when you realize how Clemson has recruited, okay, and how they play their players, how they play their backups. Okay, that is a big deal in the long run. And I think what we're going to see, obviously, is De'Arion Kendrick at one corner. I think we're going to see Mario Goodrich kind of have the leg up going into spring. There's an argument to be made there for a Sheridan Jones or somebody like that as well. But I thought Goodrich played really well when he got in the games, especially at the end of the year. And he had that huge pick against Syracuse as well in that game. So I think those are kind of your two starters to begin with. Free safety, you got Nolan Turner. I think strong safety. I'm giving the edge to Xanders. I think we've talked about this a little bit already, but we love how this guy hits, and of course, I mean, how do you not love his hair, right? But we got some talent back there for sure. It's just kind of going to be whether whether their minds are right, whether they know the playbook well enough, whether they know their assignments well enough to kind of get in there and do their job and be trusted by the coaching staff, because they've proved time and time again they go with players they trust.
Yeah, you got to go with players you trust. And I think if you look at who played the most last year, Xanders is definitely one of those guys that I don't think many people expected him to play as much as he did. And he was out there a lot and he contributed a lot, even though it was kind of garbage time in a lot of ways. But he was out there. And so give me Landon Xanders as well. Nolan Turner, a guy that returns with DK. I didn't really mention Nolan Turner, so I need to mention him there. But DK, Turner, Xanders, and then I'm going to go with Sheridan Jones. I think that he showed out this year as well and has put in a lot of work. Now, could it very easily be Andrew Booth or Mario Goodrich? Mario Goodrich was awarded the most improved player of the year a couple of years ago, and most likely to succeed was Mario Goodrich in his position. So I think that a lot of his peers believe that he is going to begin to show out on the field, but he's been plagued with some injury problems. So we'll see what he can do, how long he can stay out there. But he's definitely got some guys behind him that are ready to take his position. I don't think anybody's going to take DK's position because he made the first, or I believe, I don't want to say first team, but he made an all ACC team this year. So he's definitely, and that was his first year of playing the cornerback position. So right. I don't think anybody's going to take him there. Xanders, Turner, I think they're good. Really, that other cornerback position is the one that's up for debate.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think there's just a lot of talent to go around here. A lot of pieces that still need to be kind of put in the right part of the puzzle. Especially Andrew Booth, his injury, we don't really know exactly what that's going to entail, and kind of his coming back from that and seeing when he is kind of ready to play. A lot of people expected a lot of things from Booth, and I think he may have been in the doghouse a little bit as well with the coaching staff at some point this year. And of course, you're not even talking about 5-star Fred Davis you have coming in to challenge for one of those spots. A guy I've talked about a lot, and here's a wild card I want to throw in there. Even with all the talent I think we have, and we have stacked at cornerback and safety, and that kind of position, I've told you this. I love Malcolm Green. I don't know where they're going to use him. He's a safety, and I think he was a safety in high school. I think Clemson, I don't know if they're going to play him at safety. I don't know if they're going to play him at corner. I don't know if they're going to play him at the nickel position. It doesn't really matter to me. I think this kid is going to be super successful wherever he is. So I'm going to kind of put him out as my wild card for the next couple seasons to be one of the better recruits we've gotten. And he was a late addition as well.
Well, you already mentioned not only him, and I believe he will be a nickel. But not only him, but R.J. Mickens, you mentioned that, I believe, last week, that you felt like he was going to have some success and maybe see a lot of playing time.
Yes.
He's somebody, though, that's also been having to deal with some injuries in high school as well, so we'll have to see how he can stay healthy